When you're standing at the end of the world, the only thing you can hold is your breath. Welcome back to the Unbridled Quill. Today I will be telling you a story of a time the world ended. Soft lulling music rested over the town of Farwell like a blanket. It was the 8th of Solus, less than a week after young brother Arno passed away from a sudden and terrible sickness. The funeral processions were joined by many and watched by all. Arno had just become the newest initiate of the clerics of Nokiri in Farwell. It was to this scene that a group of unlikely comrades awoke after arriving in town the previous night. As the sun tried to peek through the overcast sky, they began to ask around. Uthin Telomir, niece of Queen Uthin Vidara and heir to the Silver Throne, was particularly interested in the sickness that killed Arno. Talo was sent to Farwell by a tip from one of her friends in the Royal Guard, saying that a cult of necromancers had been involved in what was believed to be some unfortunate losses within the town of Farwell, and when it came to hunting evil, necromancers were Talo's specialty. After speaking with Arno's family and the Temple of Nokiri, the group, having discovered a shared interest in the well-being of this town, were granted permission to inspect the body. Unfortunately, the party, being composed of Gregor, a steward of the Erin Council, Sophia, a keeper of the Viridian Watch, Dawn, a hermit paladin of Nokiri, and Talo, did not include anyone particularly well-versed in medicine. What was found was an odd symbol scarred into the flesh of the lungs by some force, no doubt necromancy. The symbol was of an unholy nature, representing Geshna, the suffering queen and one of the consumed titans. During the examination, some of the diseased bodily fluids vaporized and were briefly inhaled by Talo, but no immediate symptoms were noticed. Emphasis on immediate. They asked around further until they eventually had a direction, a few miles out of town, where necromancers were frequently spotted. The town guard didn't have the manpower and weren't receiving reinforcements from the Silver Throne, so the party took it upon themselves to deal with this danger. Shortly after arriving at the last spotted region, the party was ambushed by a group of buried skeletons, and one large, wicked beast with wings of bone and 3 different animal skulls. The power possessed by Dawn and Gregor as paladins was enough to destroy the creatures, but over the hills Sophia spotted necromancers, likely alerted by whatever this trap was. The battle quickly turned to a chase, with the party doing their best to use their smaller group size to outmaneuver their pursuers. Neither side was faster than the other, however, until fate intervened. The fleeing party ran right past an owlbear den. By the time the creature emerged, the necromancers were much closer, and despite Dawn pleading to go defend the innocent beast, the party took the opening and returned to the town. During previous discussions with the family of Brother Arno and inquiring about permission to see his body, the party was told he was conducting an off-the-books investigation into members of the Silver Throne's government. The party learned more when Liana gave them a journal that the family had dropped off for the party which belonged to Arno. He seemed to believe that the assistant to the city's judge was somehow in league with one of the cults that plagues the Elven lands, and was influencing the judge to aid some of the criminal behaviors involved with practicing the dark arts. Figuring that Talo could acquire reinforcements from the city as well, the party left for the Silver Throne, or Al Javon by its elven name. The next morning, during this night, Talo saw a horrifying apparition of Brother Arno's corpse, smiling at her, in her tavern room, and Dawn and Sophia, to remain polite, will say, spent the night with Liana the bartender. After a day's travel along the road, the party was invited to the Palace of the Silver Throne by Lady Uthin Vidara, Queen of the city, on behalf of her niece. The party spoke with her about the struggles of Farwell, to which she revealed dealing with the demonic cults that have plagued the Elven lands for centuries was currently occupying her city's guard force. They then spoke of their intentions to investigate some of the officials of Al Javon, based on the journal of Brother Arno and his witness accounts within. Vidara told them that she would see to it as soon as possible and advised against Sophia's suggestion of sneaking into the courthouse that night, though I do approve of the method. Despite the Queen's counsel, breaking into the courthouse as the moon rose to its zenith was exactly what Dawn and Sophia did. The plan almost went perfectly, Sophia using her druidic wild shape ability and getting out with a scroll that was curiously sealed in a unique case. However, on their escape they were caught by guards, at which point Sophia confessed and secretly handed Dawn the scroll, who had deceived her way out of incrimination. I don't want to bore you with the inner workings of the Silver Throne's court system, so I'll summarize as much as possible what occurred. Sophia's innocence or guilt was to be judged, and if guilty she would be sentenced likely to exile from the city, a significant financial fine within a few thousand gold pieces, or a minor curse such as the inability to open doors or windows, or ethereal text above her head labeling her crime. At the level of the courts, any judgment could be overruled by the Queen, if she so chose. However, an anonymous tip from the crowd informed the courtroom that Sophia's mother, Erin Kalea, was friends with the Queen, and also an arbiter of the Viridian Watch, the highest rank attainable within the Druidic organization. The knowledge of potential bias and Sophia's alignment with an organization oath-bound to duty and honor, which sounds like a bore, escalated the trial to the Erin Court, the highest-ranking court in the Silver Throne, within which a death sentence or life imprisonment was considered a light sentence. This escalation was a little extreme, but also taking into account that the implication of Sophia's actions could very well have led to the collapse of Al-Javan and a permanent besmirching of Elven trust in the Viridian Watch. Gregor contacted Sky Laro, the councilman he served, the member of the Erin Council, for help with the whole situation, and Talo and Dawn investigated the basement of the palace due to Brother Arno's journal also mentioning the Queen herself as suspected of cult sympathizing and or conspiracy. Talo and Dawn did in fact discover an abyssal summoning circle within the basement from which they fought off two minor demons, and were then confronted by the Venom, a high-ranking cultist criminal being investigated by Gregor on behalf of the Erin Council. After slaying this evil, the two found many clues and damning pieces of evidence that the man they had just killed was in fact the Venom, as well as Talo's butler since childhood. The party, minus Sophia, then met Sir Ian McKellen, a professional smuggler and associate of Sky Laro's sent by him to assist the party in their jailbreak. With this help, a bit of planning and preparation, the party successfully broke Sophia out of jail, ran for the southern gate of the city, and began their travels back to Farwell. I know it wasn't too long ago, but in case you forgot, I would like to remind you of the passionate interaction between Sophia, Dawn, and the bartender Liana. Up until the trial, Dawn was unaware of Sophia's family name, Erin. This made her the descendant of Erin Neara, the most famous druid in all the Elven lands, savior of the elves, and destroyer of the Devil Empire Parshram. This makes Sophia by birth more significant than most nobility in the Elvish lands, and places her under a colossal legacy to live up to. This lack of transparency caused Dawn a lot of dismay and frustration, as she has always believed in giving her whole self to those she loves. Sophia, on the other hand, has lived her whole life in the Viridian Watch, bound to keep the secrets of abyssal investigation until the Arbiter, in her case her mother, could manage public perception, validity of research, and ensure that the knowledge gleaned from investigating demon lords would be helpful rather than detrimental. This meant there was a core disagreement between the two. After a heated argument, the party split up, with Dawn going to speak to Liana, Sophia going to Rael Arno, her painting mentor and sort of adopted father, and Talo going to speak to the town guards, where she bumped into a young, eager friend of the party's named Orion. Gregor at this time had split off to attend to some of his duties as a steward of the Erin Council. During this, they heard that several people had mysteriously disappeared from Falwell, and that there were wanted posters out for Dawn and Sophia, accusing them of the assassination of the judge and later unlawful exit from jail. To top it all off, the party discovered that the evidence they had taken from the judge's courthouse was in fact a benign message addressed to the judge from another city, informing him of the medical condition of his evidently sick father. They decided they needed to leave and so planned on venturing to the nearby city of Efshleoi. I also hate elven names. Or the Phantom Halls, where Skylaro resided and Gregor would rejoin them. Rael, Arno, and Liana decided to join the party on this adventure, as Liana and Dawn were growing closer, despite the distance that was arising between Dawn and Sophia. Unfortunately, the beginning of a very dark chain of events interrupted their journey. On their travels, they were ambushed by cultists of the same group whose skeletons the party had previously slain. Though they fought hard, destroying many an undead creature, they were outnumbered and the cultists had a powerful necromancer in this troop, and so the party, along with Liana and Rael Arno, were taken back to the necromancer's fortress. Within this fortress, the party met two of the missing townspeople from Falwell, a young father named Etheric, and his 7-year-old daughter Elysia. They talked briefly, learning that the young girl had been experimented on with necromantic magic, and that she had a mother who still lived in Falwell. Dawn at this time was concerned both for the innocent lives and also for Liana, who she was quickly caring for more and more, and also who was in a mysterious, unbreakable sleep since they had entered the fortress. Sometime after, the leader of this group of cultists came in to take Liana, for she, in his own words, was inexplicably immune to the memory-affecting magics of their temple. A very verbose gentleman. At this point, Etheric stepped in saying that he was also unaffected, though his method was a combination of deliberate self-harm and associating specific injuries with certain memories in order to resist their magics. Brutal methods, but desperate times, I suppose. The head cultist took this as a game, and handed the moral dilemma to the party. He said, "Will you give up the father of this poor, troubled child and husband to an innocent woman, or do you give up the new love of your own companion, who is equally innocent to the child herself?" As he asked the party, he bore a wicked, grim smile on his face, deriving some sick enjoyment from torturing them with this horrendous decision. After painstaking debate and discussion, Sophia, Dawn, and Talo all decided that Etheric would go. The party couldn't avoid the guilt, even though Etheric himself chose to sacrifice himself, and held no ill will towards them at any point of their brief knowing each other. The party was surprised by the mysterious sounding of a conch shell from outside of the temple, which seemed to alert the necromancers within. Taking the distraction, Talo used the alchemy kit she had to make a crude acid, just strong enough to dissolve the bars of their cell. On the way out, the party saved the young Elysia and took her with them, knowing that if they left a 7-year-old girl who was curiously unresponsive to all interactions out in the woods, she likely wouldn't fare well, especially with cultists running around of various kinds. Once out of the temple, they discovered that Gregor was the source of this conch call, and he was there after being informed by Skylaro that the party was in need of his help. Eventually, the party managed to outrun the cultists, and by nightfall set up camp a short distance from the road to the Phantom Halls. Over the several days of travel, the party reconnected. Gregor informed them that he was running down leads to the south and discovered that the venom was in fact not dead, meaning that Sirik, Talo's former butler, was merely a pawn, and the real threat was still out there and willing to sacrifice their own men in order to achieve their ways. The party couldn't bring themselves to tell Gregor all of the details, but he understood that something awful had happened and that the story of why Elysia was with them was hard to tell. Unfortunately, that story will only grow in its gloom, but we'll get there. Gregor also informed the party that despite their memory only containing the day of their escape, they were actually imprisoned for a week. This lost time scared Sophia in particular, as her work in the Verdian Watch had made her aware of an incoming demonic invasion of unimaginable size which was now only 5 weeks away. They finished their journey to Hefleoi, during which Talo had another nightmare vision of the undead brother Arno, in which he seemed to imply some level of control or perhaps connection to Elysia, who, as long as the party had known her, was completely unresponsive to everything, carrying a frozen blank expression on her face. Finally, our soon-to-be heroes arrived at the fabled city of the Phantom Halls. The city was invisible to most who wandered the eastern wilds of Wanain. Instead, a road seemed to halt just before entering an immense forest comprised of a lush floor and towering trees much larger than most constructed towers. Gregor and Dawn, knowing how to enter the city, stepped forward and placed their hands against a nearby tree, before stepping through the bark as if it were no more solid than water. The party, following, entered a small city district and a front gate within what appeared to be a hollow tree, concealed by immense primal magic wielded by the druids. Within, people wandered about, disillusioned to the wonder of the legendary city within which they reside. Swiftly, Gregor led everyone to his boss's manor. Within the highest branches of the city, where eyes turned upward were met with clear views of the sky, rather than the dense forest canopy. The party informed Councilman Skylaro of everything they had experienced, minus their interactions with Etheric and what they considered to be a murder on their part, including some plan by the necromancers to pulp Falwell, and implication of a scheme to create their own god to hold dominion over the undead. Sophia also told Skylaro of her knowledge about the incoming demonic horde, breaking her oath, for she believed someone of his station knowing would be for the best in regards to the Elvenland's safety. Her oath being one of secrecy bound to the Verdian Watch and, by extension, her mother. Skylaro told her that a secret this large could destroy the trust her group has and put them in more danger when fighting alongside each other. Later that night, he told Gregor the party was in need of a leader among them to make the tough calls when there's no time to vote and debate what the best course of action be. Sort of a captain without a ship. Not unlike myself. Later that night, he told Gregor the party was in need of a leader. He also told Gregor what Sophia had told him about the demons. The party were all given rooms, and Dawn and Liana spent the night in quiet comfort to one another for the past week's experiences. The next day, Gregor confronted Sophia about the secret she was keeping, to which she pleaded that she was bound by her oath not to tell them. He then claimed she was foolish and reckless to withhold that information for any reason, regardless of oaths or better judgment. This she refuted that he had no grounds to question an arbiter of the Viridian Watch, for her mother was the one who ordered the secret. Before Sophia stormed out, Taylor revealed to the party that a concerning dark mark had been spreading from her chest and was now up to the base of her neck. She noticed it seemed to grow each time she had a spiritual visit from the eerie brother Arno. It was decided that research needed to be done to understand the forces at play. Meanwhile, Skylaro investigated ancient elven artifacts that may aid the salvation of the elves, and told the party of a unified kingdom he was slowly working to form between the elven cities. The party were unable to uncover much, despite having access to the Archdruid's manse, but they did uncover an old theory of a kind of magic called a curse pact, a magical hybrid of a malevolent curse and a warlock's patron pact. It was theorized that with enough power and some kind of catalyst, a pact could be offered by a strong enough entity that, unless accepted, would present as a curse on the target of the pact. Sort of a threat or intimidation into having magical powers, rather than the usual manipulation and temptations. The party guessed that Taylor was in some limbo state, neither a part of the pact nor affected by its curse, but feared for her future and the meaning of the dark mark on her skin. Dawn sought out an old friend of hers within the city, Aaron Delea, distant cousin to Sophia, though they have never met before this. Elven families are very large and very confusing. Delea was a fellow follower of Nokiri and often discussed faith and religious history with Dawn before Dawn left the city many years ago. Arendalea was able to tell them that they may find more answers, and perhaps the location of an Arborum Divinis, if they sought out one of the Ashen Seers who lived atop a nearby mountain. The Arborum Divinis are pieces to an ancient holy tree of the elves that was imbued with immense power to destroy unholy artifacts and magic. She also theorized that Talos' seeming resistance to Arno's curse may be due to Talos' connection to blood magic, or Talo was a blood hunter who specialized in hunting undead. Delea then explained that blood magic is a dark power, discovered and developed by the fallen Delville Empire of Parshran. The party finally decided that they would take some rest before going to see the Ashen Seer, for Skylaro told them that, given the timeline they shared with him, news of whatever the pulping mentioned by the cultists would be arriving to the city in a day or two. In the following days, Gregor received a new halberd forged with a neck for slaying demons. Sophia prayed to Nokiri, feeling lost, like she was failing at her endeavors, and was surprised by Elysia being there and hugging her in that moment, the first conscious action taken by the mysterious child. And Dawn told Liana the full story of their imprisonment, most importantly, their decision to save Liana's life at the cost of Etherix. In response, Liana told Dawn she loves her. Then the day arrived when the scouts returned. The whole city was gathered within an enormous city center with a central tower holding a high platform atop which stood the queen of the Phantom Halls, Lady Oris Nami, the Archdruid, and Councilman Skylaro. Lady Oris Nami began to speak to the crowds, cutting through the fog of tension hanging over the city center. I'm sure you're all aware that something dreadful has happened in the Silver Throne. Less than a few days ago, necromancers south of our city set upon it with dark magics. We will not discuss the details, as I have been told by our scouts that the current state of the town is too much to stomach. All the men have been taken, and the women and children killed through necromantic practice. Of those left within the town, there are no survivors, and it is unfortunately safe to assume that those who were taken found no better fate. We've allocated extra resources to the Temple of Nokiri to help the bereaved through this time of grief and tribulation. I know many of us had friends and family within Falwell. My profoundest condolences to all of you. Spend time with those you love. Farewell for now. After this news and some time mourning, supporting each other, reflecting, and remembering, Skylaro told the party that a crucial item was to be delivered to the Venom in the Silver Throne. He also delivered to them a note his guards received late the night before. It reads, Hail, heroes! I haven't seen you guys in town in a while, but I'm hoping I see you soon. We've been attacked by the Cult of the Fallen. I've taken as many people into the stronghold of the barracks as I could. I thought it was what you guys would do. I don't know how long we can hold here. I am hoping the necromancers are too focused to see this bird. I think you guys headed toward Efshleoi from what I heard, so I'll send this to the councilman. I'll be here holding out as long as I can. Your friend, Orion. Next to his name, a seal of the Falwell Guard was stamped on the letter. With this, the party decided that they would face the horrors of Falwell that were omitted in reports on their way to the Silver Throne. Liana, feeling that she had no one else left, wanted to accompany Dawn. Arno, in a paternal manner, wanted to stay with Sophia, and Sophia couldn't bear to leave Elysia. So, the now party of 7 set out from the Phantom Halls to face the ruins of a town they couldn't save in the hopes of preserving Aljavon from the demonic forces at play. Falwell was a sight not properly describable in any complete way. The town wasn't destroyed, but frozen. No buildings were fallen, no fires giving smoke. Most of the vendors' carts weren't even pushed off their stands. Women and children, indiscriminately killed, didn't lay, but stood frozen in their place. Expressions of fear permanently formed on their faces as their life was pulled out of them in an instant. Deep within the town, Sophia found a small home with the name Etheric by the door. Rushing inside, she found a small amount of dust, one family painting with a portrait displaying Elysia and her family, and a door to a master bedroom. Within was a small doll with Elysia's name on it, a bedside table with some of Etheric's old belongings, and on the other side of the bed a beautiful elven woman. Tear streaks were dried against her unnaturally grey face as her form lay frozen like a heartbroken doll. Still beneath blankets, her stomach was swollen like an abandoned home, or crib. Sophia left, unable to speak to what she had witnessed, but trapped in the horror of knowing what it meant for the young girl she had come to care so dearly for. During this, Talo rushed to the barracks. All the men in the town had vanished entirely, but at the back of the building was an iron door that had been blocked from the outside by a magical lock, which Sophia dispelled. Once within, Talo found Orion, impossibly still standing with his sword held forward, as though to ward off danger. Behind him, a room full of townsfolk who, like him, died of thirst before anyone had come to the rescue. Breaking at the sight of such a young and hopeful man, punished for some crime he never committed, Talo took his blade and laid his body down so he could rest at last. Dawn and Liana searched the tavern where they met, but as with the rest of the town, there were no survivors. Crestfallen, and in some profound way lost, the party reunited, and Gregor received a message from Skylaro, telling them to head north a few miles before moving towards the city. Arriving at a small camp, mysteriously set up with logs for sitting around a fire, the party cautiously set up to rest before being startled by Sir Ian McKellen's entrance from the nearby forest carrying firewood. He opened with his usual flirtatious, unserious comments, but quickly assessed the grim demeanor of the party and offered his ears. They all talked briefly before resting for the night, not having fully processed what they had actually witnessed quite yet. Deciding on a plan to approach from opposite sides of the river that was to deliver the package the party intended to intercept. Sneaking around the city to the west sewer gates, the party took to the trees on the north side of the river so that they could lie in wait, and Ian, Arno, and Elysia hid in the forest on the south side, whilst Ian fashioned a grappling hook. Everyone watched tensely in a cautious silence until three figures approached, led by a strong woman wearing a tricorn hat and studded leather armor, and accompanying a floating lockbox. At the same moment, a woman in an elegant but blood-stained dress approached from the sewer gate of the city, wearing a grotesque mask surrounded with horns. Beside the masked Venom were two disfigured and enormous humanoid demons with horns protruding from all regions of their bodies. As the coins were exchanged, a hefty sum of 1,000,000 gold pieces, I might add, Ian took action, hiding behind a rock while hooking the floating lockbox. The Venom accused the smuggler Captain Rhea of foul play, and a fight broke out. The lower-ranking pirates were quickly slain by the demonic enforcers, and though a tough fight was put up by Captain Rhea with her twin blades, the Venom placed a poison in her that caused her limbs to fall numb. The party debated intervening, but decided from what they were watching that the Venom was too powerful for them. Captain Rhea died painfully as the party watched. The Venom reclaimed the payment and sent her two demons across the river after the package. By this point, the trio were long gone, and the party began to attack one of the demons, slaying it before it could cross the river, and rushed back to get to their camp, worried for the safety of their companions. The rushed movement of the party was loud, and gave away their location momentarily as they rushed past the city. Demons out on some random patrol forced them into hiding, sniffing and snarling about the area, eventually deciding no one was there. They finally arrived back at the camp from the night before, where they rejoined Elysia and Arno, who informed them that Ian insisted on going with the box alone. At this point, they headed for the mountains to speak with the Ashen Seer on their way back to the city. The climb was difficult. The party avoided avalanches, rock slides, and scuffled with a yeti before Dawn convinced everyone to move past and even healed it of the wounds they had dealt before fleeing. Eventually, they arrived at the top of the mountain, which held more the shape of a crater than a peak. At the center, a wide tree with its canopy set ablaze burned like a torch in a brazier, casting a thick, tall plume of smoke into the sky above. As they approached, uncertain of how to find or commune with the seer, the branches of the tree began to shift, and a face was revealed within the bark of the tree that released billows of smoke as it spoke to the party. They asked it of the oncoming horde of demons, asking if they could stop it, if their quest would be successful, and if the elves would survive. Alas, the seer answered in riddles and vaguely explained that sharing future events as true events implies a rigid structure that doesn't truly exist, and that any answer to their questions would be arguable at best. Although, he did state that forming an alliance of the Elven City Kingdoms would give the elves the best odds of surviving the oncoming apocalypse. Finally, finding that they could not know the future from this communion, the party asked about the Arborum Divinus. The seer then began to test them, calling out their flaws or mistakes, such as Dawn lying to the guard after breaking into the courthouse, Halo agreeing to the Hunter's Bane ritual without realizing the curse it carried, and Sophia failing to tell the party about the invasion she knew of, while also breaking her oath by telling the councilman Skylaro. The seer explained that no matter how justified or small the party's transgressions may be, any failure, grand or slight, could be catastrophic for those handling one of the Arborum Divinus. The party managed to convince the seer into allowing them a trial, at which point he revealed a cave in the mountaintop from which an adolescent green dragon emerged. The seer told them that 3 trials would find them while they cared for this dragon, and that seeing it through these trials was the key to understanding the responsibility they were asking for. As the party accepted, Elysia spoke her first words since meeting the party, gesturing towards the young dragon and naming it Aze. Feeling like they had just witnessed a miracle, the party camped the night atop the mountain. Sophia tried to speak with Elysia, but the young girl seemed to return to her absent-minded demeanor. Through the night, Gregor was called back to the city to assist Skylaro and was told he would not be taking part in the trials, hence why he had not been questioned as the other 3 were. And the rest of the party had smoky visions in their sleep. Dawn saw some evil force attempting to take the young dragon from them. Sophia saw a powerful ally take in the young dragon. And Talo witnessed a great beast approaching the party as they traveled. The next morning, upon arriving at the base of the mountain, the party was attacked by a group of the Fallen accompanied by a skeletal owlbear. Scared at first, the party surprised themselves as they found they had grown greatly since their first fight with the cult, and quickly slew the necromancers and protected Aze. With this, it was revealed to them that they had passed the first and easiest of the trials. After the battle, they finished their journey back to the Phantom Halls, spotting a battalion of guards from the Silver Throne who were denied entry to the city, and then vanished through an abyssal portal. Finally, they headed inside with the uncomfortable confirmation that the rumors that the venom had been growing in influence within Al-Shavan were true, and that the city was at least partially under a criminal control. Within the city, Dawn went to leave a note at her parents' house, uncertain of how they would view her after 15 years away. She left when she was only 17 on a religious journey, which is quite ambitious for a child, but who am I to judge? As she set the paper down in front of the door, her hands shaking, her mother was about to go to the market. The two stared at each other for a minute before her mother broke down, hugging her tightly and calling for her father. While they caught up, the rest of the party found that Ian was comatose in Skylaro's manor, with servants, the councilman, and Gregor all attending to and researching his illness, which was caused by the artifact the party intercepted, now identified as the Heart of Xeric, another one of the consumed titans, and the demon lord of corruption and disease. Truthfully, it was a wonder that Ian wasn't already dead from its abyssal influence. There were none other who had come into contact with the heart who could say the same. Talo took Elysia to her room while Sophia stayed behind and shortly after the Archdruid entered at the request of Skylaro. As she prepared a ritual of some kind, Aze asked if he could watch, as he was curious about druidic magic, believing he had some innate potential within himself. To which Sophia agreed, so long as she could stay with him. After the Archdruid completed her ritual, she turned to Sophia, saying that the sickness was beyond her power, but Sophia could help. The Archdruid explained that Sophia's lineage as a descendant of Eren Neara gives her a potent connection to the primal elemental energy that her ancestor had wielded. While no one had done it before, in theory, any descendant of the Eren line is capable of tapping into this Eren power. Through a sort of guided meditation, Sophia entered an elven trance, but rather than resting, she communed with the spirit of Eren Neara, tapping into the immense well of energy that the Archdruid described. Combining this ancestral power with the knowledge and expertise of the Archdruid, Ian was healed of his ailments and returned to consciousness, where he was greeted with celebration as Sophia beheld elemental symbols that were now tattooed on her skin. As Taelo sat with Elysia elsewhere in the manor, Elysia said, "I'm cold," to Taelo and held her hand, showing her that her body felt freezing to the touch. Taelo, shocked at the child speaking for now the second time, simply held her until they both fell asleep. The next day, the Archdruid did one last checkup on Ian, and upon confirming that he had recovered, aside from some blindness that he was slowly adjusting to, she went to leave when Aze asked if she could teach him. This was a hefty question given the circumstances, and so the Archdruid agreed if the party was okay with it. Finally leaving, the party took care of personal business before discussing the question. Taelo sought out the Church of Nokiri to ask about having the curses that bound her broken so she could start fresh, away from the influence of her grieving aunt or the strange haunting of Brother Arno. Councilman Laro gave Gregor his seal, which would allow him to communicate with any who bore the rings given to all allies of the councilman, as well as telling Gregor that he was proud of him. Liana, after talking with Dawn, ended up staying with her parents as the most dangerous times any of them had seen grew closer. Lastly, Sophia alerted her mother, the arbiter of the Spider's Cradle and the Viridian Watch, that they were going to try and take out the venom and disrupt some dark ritual that Skylaro's scouts reported was being prepared beneath the Silver Throne. Alas, at the end of the day, Sophia, Dawn, and Taelo met to discuss Aze's request. Shortly after the debate started, the young dragon told them he believed this to be one of the trials, and that it had to be their decision, rather than his. The three proceeded to debate whether or not Aze should go with the Archdruid for the next 4.5 hours. At the beginning of the discussion, Sophia believed that the answer was to let Aze go, as he is his own person and it should be his choice. She also remarked that the artifact wouldn't ask to go with someone, so Aze shouldn't be compared to it, which is what she thought Dawn was doing. Taelo at first was quiet, while Dawn argued that they wouldn't let someone else have the artifact, so they shouldn't let Aze go either. She backed up her point by saying that there was a third trial, and it wouldn't make sense for Aze to be gone before that trial happened. Taelo finally spoke, agreeing with Dawn mostly on the point of the third trial, and feeling that the whole purpose of their relationship with Aze was to represent how they should interact with the artifact, should they acquire it. At this point, they turned to Aze, who now revealed that he believes this is the second trial, and that all he could tell them was it had to do with responsibility. At this point, Sophia's perspective changed. Her viewpoint, shaped by an upbringing in the Viridian Watch, told her that if Aze, and metaphorically the artifact, were their responsibility, that they had to bear that and not give it to anyone else. Dawn argued, but was gradually becoming convinced, stuck between the two sides, uncertain which choice was correct. This discussion carried on for a significant portion of the debate before Dawn was fully convinced, and the two turned to Taelo. After her long silence, listening to the other two, Taelo argued that they in fact should let Aze go. Her stance was that it was their responsibility to recognize when someone is better suited than them for handling the artifact. The Archdruid seemed to be wiser, more powerful, more experienced, and knew more of the elven history than the party combined, so she believed the most responsible thing they could do was let go of control so someone else can handle it. When she finished her argument, including a tangent of her parents leaving her with her aunt, which she believed they did with the goal of her having a better life than she would with them, Dawn was convinced, in no small part influenced by the pain Talo held when discussing her parents. Finally, after hours of heated debate, Sophia reluctantly agreed as the other two kept pushing that this was the best, and they went with Aze to the Archdruid's manse. After he said goodbye to each of them and went inside, Talo left immediately. Dawn began to follow, but saw Sophia standing there, unmoving. Dawn went back for her, and the two fought for a moment, Sophia instantly regretting their decision, and Dawn saying that it was too late regardless whether they chose right or wrong. The decision was made. That night, as they sat in the common room in Skylaro's manor, the Ashen Seer visited them through the smoke of the candles that illuminated the space. Its enormous presence overwhelmed the room as his voice bellowed that they had proven themselves unfit to carry such an important artifact as an Arborum Divinis. The party protested, explaining their reasoning, to which he explained the question of responsibility has no care for capability. Those who carry the burden are those who choose to do so. It matters not if they are the most fit, most powerful, or most knowledgeable to do so, because those who are wiser, stronger, or better off hadn't chosen to take this responsibility. When the seer was gone, Skylaro revealed his backup plan to them, which was to steal the only Arborum Divinis, the location of which was known to him or anyone. The Leaf, guarded by a stronghold of the Archdruid's own making. Before they could challenge the Archdruid's stronghold, however, they had to go back to the Silver Throne one last time to interrupt the dark ritual I mentioned previously. Skylaro insisted on accompanying the party to seek out Lady Uthin Vidara, as the party shared their suspicion that she in fact is the Venom. His plan was to distract her with a need to uphold political appearances while the party destroyed the ritual beneath the city. It would be out of character for the queen or king of any of the elven cities to deny a audience to one of the Aran Council members. The travel was tense, especially for Gregor, who sensed some secret piece to Skylaro's plan that wasn't being shared, which was out of character for the councilman. Sophia made a point to speak with her mother and tell her what the party was going to do. After another week's traveling, counting down the time before any unity of the elven lands would be too late, the party once again found themselves at the Silver Throne's outer wall. They snuck in through the very sewer grates they had previously intercepted a package from, and swiftly began moving towards the middle of the city. To their dismay, Talo's knowledge of the city didn't quite seem to extend to the sewers as they found themselves lost with a regiment of guards approaching. The group scrambled, hiding and running or preparing for battle, until Talo and Gregor was spotted, and just before an ambush was sprung by the party, Talo pulled her rank as heir to the throne and insisted on seeing the queen. Agreed to take Talo to the queen, and Dawn slowly followed, having successfully hid from the initial encounter. At last, the party found themselves looking at two enormous horn nexuses, masses of flesh and horns that formed tethers to the abyss, that were built by the cult despite previous beliefs that horn nexuses could only be created at places where the abyss overlapped with the material plane, spontaneously appearing with the corruptive energy. Between the nexuses was an enormous portal frame, and around 24 cultists chanted an incantation towards the construction. At that point, the Venom entered the room, floating down from high in the chamber, and greeting the party. The exchange was quick. Threats from the party, followed by a reveal from the Venom that she had captured Skylaro, who was being held in a cage, sickly and weakened. Talo attempted to attack one of the chanters, but was ensnared by the Venom's magic. Finally, Talo called the Venom's bluff and demanded her aunt face her with no mask. That's when the fight began. The party faced a monumental task. Out of 20 cultists, they would have to slay at least half to stop the ritual, whilst taking on the immense magical power of the Venom. Talo tried to cut into the chanting cabal as fast as possible while Sophia began trading magical blows with Lady Vidara, and Gregor moved instinctually to defend Skylaro out of a sense of duty. Dawn, desperately tried to position herself to help anyone who needed, but the party separated in 3 directions, limiting her abilities to heal. At this point, other cultists and corrupt guards set upon the party in their various places. They fought hard, killed the attackers, and several of the incanters as well. But then the fight took a harsh turn. Overwhelmed by numbers, surrounded on all sides, Uthin Talomir, heir to the Silver Throne, fell. As she was clinging to mere strands of life, Dawn rushing to save her, Gregor trying to cleave through after Skylaro had told him not to worry about him. Taylor's unconscious body was struck by a frozen bolt of magic from her aunt. This was also an unspoken order from the corrupted queen to her minions to finish the job. Loyal to their diabolic leader, the party not fast enough to intercede. Taylor, before any curses could be broken, before any chance of redemption could be pursued, was slain. Her death held no glory, no dignity, just a frigid pain from a woman who she came to view as a mother. At this point, before anyone else fell as the tides of battle had shifted, Aaron Kalea appeared with 2 other members of the Viridian Watch and rescued the surviving 3 of the party from the sewers of the Silver Throne. Through druidic magic, they suddenly appeared in front of Skylaro's manor. The Arbiter explained that she had been watching through a magical connection to her daughter's crest, saw the fight shifting, and refused to let the party die. Gregor asked why she didn't save Skylaro, furious at abandoning his post, and she shared with them that Skylaro's plan was to die at the hands of the Venom, or at least to appear to die that way. He had poisoned himself long before the battle started, making a deliberate choice to become a martyr for the cause of the Elven Unity. He left behind control and the majority of his belongings to Gregor, and split the remaining minority among the rest of the party. Recounting the battle, the party was one short of stopping the ritual entirely. And even though it was slowed, they didn't have time now with everything else they needed to do. Mostly in silence, they spent the next day in mourning for their fallen comrade and the beloved councilman. It was Gregor who eventually found the resolve to push forward, not forgetting about those who had passed, but to honor their goals and dreams by continuing the mission they had all agreed to. As they prepared to face the Archdruid's stronghold, Ian gave them the key which he had stolen from Hermance, despite his blindness, and contacted a smuggler friend of his to assist the party in their quest. He also revealed to the party at this time that the young dragon Aze was no longer with the material plane. Following directions left behind by the late councilman, the party met their future companion at the entrance to the Druid's vault. His name is Connor, and he is a sorcerer from the distant magical human kingdom of Rivaris. Connor's story becomes a lot more interesting after today's story ends, so be sure to check out the stream I mentioned earlier. After quick introductions and a very vague explanation of the dour mood, the party went inside. The vault was more like a curated labyrinth of stone brick hidden beneath the earth and forest floor, including several rooms with terrifying perils and confusing magics, impeding passage both through difficulty of navigation as well as psychological warfare. The first room was filled completely by a magical darkness, which once inside, one would begin to hear voices attempting to incite self-doubt and even mimicking other members of the party to confuse and disorient. Slowly trying to move through, our adventurers discovered some missing sections in the floor. Gregor was the first to get through, slowly making his way, tapping the floor with his halberd, eventually finding the exit from the darkness. He was followed by Sophia, who used her wild shape to transform into a spider, crawling along the walls, avoiding any of the gaps completely. Between these 2 successes, however, Dawn was tricked into one of the holes, and in an attempt to help her, Connor fell in as well. Sophia and Gregor proceeded into a hallway, after trying to call for the 2 party members and getting no response. Down this path was a split, in which one direction led towards stones deteriorated by some kind of acid or mold, and the other led towards seemingly ordinary or somewhat beautiful flowers. They discussed the mind games of the Archdruid, trying to ascertain how many levels of reverse psychology were being employed here, finally deciding to explore the flowery path. Their movement turned into a dash as the flora began advancing towards them, releasing noxious spores into the air and lungs of the most famous half of the party. Tired but alive, they found themselves in a large room with 2 doors and a row of lit braziers along the far wall. As they moved, the flames seemed to grow, but Gregor discovered he could walk all the way to one of the doors without being burned. As he opened it, he was suddenly forced through by some magic, and Sophia was left to solve the puzzle and wonder if Gregor had gone through of his own volition, as from her perspective, he appeared to just step through the door without saying a word. Thinking about their experiences and the themes of going against their instincts, Sophia boldly stepped into the flames, suddenly being transported somewhere completely unharmed. Looking around, she found herself on a dead end of some road through a forest she didn't recognize. Before she arrived here, however, the other 3, starting with Dawn and Connor, found themselves bound by their arms and legs to large trees. Above them was a flock of black birds, and in the middle of them some pile of large tree trunks. Talking for a few moments, Gregor appearing, and then a bit more discussion at the periodic rumbling nearby, Connor used his sorceress control of magic to unbind himself from the ropes. At that moment, a gargantuan creature with boiled green skin and 3 heads burst through the tree line with more logs for the pile. Connor, in a panic, turned invisible, and after a bit of misdirection, distracted the troll. Connor freed his 2 companions, upon which they left after Dawn asked the flock of crows about where they were. By the time they reconnected with Sophia, the party determined that they were within a demiplane, a pocket dimension, of the Archdruid's making. They also discovered that the artifact they were seeking was in a palace they could see distantly at the other end of the main road, and that the Archdruid avoids a mysterious volcano down an off-shooting road for some unknown reason. Upon discovering their escape, the dire troll, whose name was Gorbudge, flew into a rage, chasing them down the road and eventually passing out from some immense anger he seemed to display whenever he was exposed to magic nearby. The party then made their way to the volcano to investigate. Within, they found a cavernous chamber at the center of which was an ashen seer. Surprised by its presence, the party approached to ask for guidance or advice on the acquisition of the artifact and unifying the elven lands. The seer explained that it came here of its own power to, quote, keep an eye on the Archdruid, and because of this was not aware of any unity or demonic invasion involving the material plane. It also explained that this plane did not experience time parallel to the plane the party was from, and thus they had much more time to accomplish anything they chose whilst within the Archdruid's demiplane. He told them that the Archdruid's knack for psychological warfare was the key point in the design of her defenses for the artifact. Upon entering the palace, they could expect to face 4 opponents, each one designed to press into each of the party members' blind spots or weaknesses, both in combat and persona. To overcome this, the party was given 3 things by the Ashen Seer. The last thing he gave to them were magical gifts. A wand to Connor, a halberd to Gregor, a pendant to Dawn, and a ring to Sophia. Before these physical gifts, though, was general advice for the final trial. They would likely have to choose against their initial judgments, and the seer told them that Gregor's was a knack to get distracted by what seemed to be the biggest and most important danger. Dawn's was her incredible compassion, which, despite being a positive trait, could make her easier to manipulate by those evil or uncaring enough to twist it against her. And Sophia's was a tendency of carrying all of the onus of responsibility. She struggles to let others help instead of trying to do everything alone. Connor, according to the seer, was an outlier who carried some confusing and obscuring magic in his blood. Before all of these, though, the Ashen Seer had explained that the party would ultimately fail in all of their goals if they didn't let go of the pains and blocks they were holding between each other. For Connor, this block was a lack of familiarity. and as such, he didn't speak much in the following conversation. But he did share that he had also lost someone close to him fairly recently, and so could sympathize with the situation the party was in. Before the other three spoke, the Ashen Seer explained what he meant with smoky visions of their adventures so far. He showed the argument between Gregor and Sophia. He showed Dawn's memories of the owlbear and the party's experience surrounding Etheric's death. He showed the different discoveries of the horrors they all saw after the pulping of Falwell. And finally, he showed what he deemed most important. The party watched as in the smoke, a vision of Talos' death displayed each of their attempts to prevent it. Each of them, in some way, considered themselves guilty for that loss, but none of them had truly spoken to each other about the emotional battle that persisted long after the initial fight had passed. While they may have even been unaware, this was causing a tension between the group and disrupting communication, which in a fight against powerful opponents could be the difference between life and death. After a cathartic dialogue, giving each of them a better understanding and chance to support each other, Gregor shared that his childhood home was destroyed by demons on his watch, that he had been viewing himself as a soldier his whole life, but finally realized that all of them were soldiers in a war much greater than any between kingdoms. After the gifts and advice from the Ashen Seer, they departed for the palace to unify the Elven lands once and for all, remembering that Skylaro said one of these artifacts would give the Elven leaders something to rally behind. Within the palace, the party succeeded. Sophia faced an expert duelist, but worked with Dawn to overwhelm his one-on-one expertise. Connor faced some elemental storm, mirroring his focus on storm sorcery, but standing out from the others in some weird way. Gregor was distracted for a moment by what appeared to be a powerful wizard, but went to help the party when he saw Dawn struggling against her antagonist. Dawn was facing the healer of their enemy, and struggled to strike what appeared to be a young woman desperate to keep her allies alive. Gregor's military experience allowed him to shut down his emotions, to take out the healer, and the party had won the fight. Their opponents were revealed to be shape-shifting statues, though Connor's was oddly vanished. All of this managed by some archfey prince who oversaw the palace. Regardless, they went on to seize the leaf from a hidden chamber and return to the material plane. Upon appearing back in the city, they found one of the theorized effects of this adventure to be true. With the leaf taken from its resting place, the Phantom Halls was no longer an invisible city, but a collection of high platforms subject to the weather and prying eyes of the world. They confronted the Archdruid, pointing out that if she maintained her stance that Skylaro described as selfishly resistant to uniting the Elven kingdoms, her city would fall, as the magic used to hide it was no longer hers. Knowing that the artifact she'd claimed from Aze was equally powerful but not capable of the defensive magic the leaf could create, she conceded her stance and offered her support to their cause. The last step for their unity to become real was for Gregor to attend a conclave of all the Elven leaders, at which the rest of the party would propose their goal for a new Elven kingdom. Entering the Aran Garden, the sacred convening place of the Aran Council where decisions regarding the fate of the Elven lands on a continental scale were made, the party paused at the weight of it all. The 28 most powerful elves, possibly on the entire planet, in one moss-carpeted chamber outlined by trees with a cultivated canopy that created a spotlight in the center of the room. They saw the kings and queens of all 6 of the Elven cities, including the still undiscovered Queen Vidara, whom the other leaders believed was in the middle of a military effort to retake control of her city. The 9 Aran councilmen, including their ally Gregor Rennick, the 8 High Arbiters of the Viridian Watch, one of which being Sophia's mother, and the 5 Horizon Walkers responsible for scouting and maintaining Elven knowledge of the rest of the world, similar to ambassadors, though there was no country of elves for them to serve. After some time talking around and even holding a scathing exchange with Lady Vidara, the time came where the party stepped into the spotlight of the chamber. Gregor sat for the first time in Skylaro's former throne, still not accustomed to his new position as councilman, and he communicated telepathically with the party through a connection established by Sophia's new ring. Once the party's plan had been laid out, the leaders began asking questions, and the proposal quickly became a debate in which the party was defending and arguing for an established country of elves to unify them against the oncoming demons, lest they be divided and therefore conquered. This debate formed three groups. The party, alongside Aaron Kalea, Councilman Vise Nilo, Queen Oris Nami, and two of the Horizon Walkers argued for the unity and how much it would benefit all of the elven cities and people. Lady Uthin Vidara, alongside Councilman Avir Kalo, King Deovar, and 6 others argued for their own reasons that the independence of the cities and afforded freedom of the elves had been historically hard fought, and that the cities agreed to being able to defend themselves over 1,000 years ago when the ancient elven kingdom was disbanded and the elements awakened by Aaron Nayara. The discussion lasted almost 12 hours, with every belief and claim being refuted on both sides to varying degrees of success. By the end of it all, when it was finally time to take a vote, the party was asked to step outside so the leaders could make their decisions. The party needed at least the majority of each faction, and only the kings or queens who agreed would have their cities included in the unity. When they re-entered, they had swayed 21 of the 28 votes, including all of the kings and queens, aside of course from Lady Vidara, who had her own dark intentions behind her decision. Gregor discussed with the other leaders the writing of the founding charter, and the party talked about the urgency with which the armies needed to be deployed to the location of insurgents discovered by Sophia's mother. And finally, when it was done, they all celebrated their triumph before spending the next week preparing for the Horde. Gregor held multiple meetings of the leaders, getting accustomed to his position as councilman and enjoying some of the benefits that come with it. Sophia talked at length with Arno, Elysia, and her mother, trying to calm her fears of the worst outcome of the oncoming invasion. And partially motivated by the immense threat, Liana proposed to Dawn, saying that she felt sometimes like Dawn was all she had to hold on to, and for that she wanted to be by her side for any and everything that was to come. The excitement and triumph gave way to dread and anxiety. Few people found proper rest the night before. It was quiet. Clear skies as moonlight shone down over what was about to be one of the largest battles to ever occur in the Elven lands. With the leaf removed, they could watch from the high platform that Skylaro's manor was built upon. The bright, full moon cast a stark, silver light on the rolling green grass 100 feet below. Moments passed, then minutes. Thousands of elves looking on as apocalypse approached. In the silence, Sir Rael Arno spoke, half to the party and half to the wind. When you're standing at the end of the world, the only thing you can hold is your breath. Eventually, they watched as hundreds of armored elves, then thousands, took to the fields. Bows were readied, swords and shields braced for a charge, cavalry circling and positioning into a block of 12,000 elven soldiers from the 6 cities. Then that army was joined by treants and creatures of the Fey realms, and then dragons, heeding the request of Councilman Varus, also known as the Dragon King. The city had a moment to behold the grandeur of all the warriors of the Elven lands before the sky began to peel. A rift in the air in front of their army opened, small at first, releasing scatterings of scrappy abyssal creatures, then erupting into a gargantuan size with horrid monstrosities of all sizes from human to behemoths, charging through until all that was seen was an oncoming wave of flesh and horns. The horde emerged almost 100,000 strong, and everyone knew the end of the world had begun. Hey guys, my voice is fried from recording this video, but I just wanted to pop in to remind you that we stream on Twitch on Tuesdays from 6:30 to 9:30, and also to say that I will be following up this video with a kind of behind the scenes on the GM side of things of the events that led up to ending the world in Act 1 of my campaign, and why I think some of you should consider doing it in your own campaigns too. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you have a great week. Please like, subscribe, comment, do all the interaction stuff so the algorithm sees our channel as something worth promoting. And until next time, keep telling stories.